Go ahead, Sean.
Hi, guys. Welcome to the Pulling Around Show. Today we've got a special treat for you. It's Mr. Eddie Cohen of Cohen Custom Cues. He just won two big awards, the first ever to do it last week at the International Cue Collectors Show here in Oklahoma City. I've met him before, but I've never seen this many of his cues at once. Eddie, how's it feel to win those two awards?
Uh, Feels good. I'm really appreciative. I wasn't expecting it.
Okay. Well, can you tell what the two awards are? One is voted on by cue collectors, and the other one is by the public. Can you tell us the difference in those two awards?
Yeah, so the first award I won was the collector's choice, and the members of the ICCS, even collectors that weren't displaying but participated in this year's event, they had a private meeting the morning on Saturday where each cue maker got to put up a cue to be voted on. That was part of the ICCS. So amongst those collectors, that's who they voted to be best for that show.
Okay.
And then
And then,
the second award is what they call the Grand Collection. So in my opinion, that's really tough to win just because not only each cue maker, but every collector who displayed got to put up a cue to be voted on. And then everybody who everyone in the show and everyone who paid to get in and the public got a card to vote on, and they voted out for the best cue that was up there.
well, your cue was cue number 14. And I know after we left, I know three people personally who voted for you.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk about that cue. That what is that style called with the weaving up and down gold?
Yeah, I guess
What is that?
technically what most people see it's normally solid lines, and it's referred to as lattice work. That's basically just like intertwining lines wrapped around a cylinder.
Okay, what
I,
was the theme for that cue?
what's up?
What was the inspiration for that cue is a better question.
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to do that kind of work. I just kind of wanted to put a different twist to it. Yeah. I mean, when they gave us the theme this year, they called it Midnight in Burl. It was the rules were the cue had to be at least 50% or more ebony, and then the rest would be a burl wood, and then everything else was up to the cue maker. So that's kind of what it like. I had an idea of doing something similar to that, and when they gave us those guidelines, I was like, okay, like here's my time to do it.
And this was your first ICCS.
Second actually.
Second. Okay.
Yeah, my first time was back in 2017 in Vegas. Yeah, that was my first time I got invited. That's the last time we had a show, just because I don't know why we didn't do one 2019. Normally it's every other year, but then COVID hit, and I know we were supposed to do one last year. They had planned for it to be in Dallas, and then they couldn't secure hotel rooms because there was a Texas A&M football game going on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I've read your biography on your page, and then I've asked some other people questions about you. But for a cue maker, especially to be this popular, you're kind of new on the scene. I mean, it's been less than 10 years, and you're quite young.
I've been doing it full time now, like 10 years, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of what everybody's been saying my entire career. I mean, we're just newer in cues, but I've been around the industry for a long time because, I was actually a cue collector myself, but I played in like a lot of tournaments and major events, so like I'm friends with still a lot of the pros that tour and stuff. So people had seen me around before.
Player, collector, and now cue maker for the last 10 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I have a question for a cue maker. Have you ever got to the very end of making the cue, maybe like the last few steps, and then messed it up or made a mistake and just scrapped it, had to trash it?
I had one and I technically didn't scrap it. I ended up keeping it for myself. The old way I used to do the veneers, sometimes I used to trim them on a router, and sometimes the router would kick. And normally, if it did, it would chip out the veneer. So you would normally like put it on the bottom where it wouldn't be seen. And on like the final pass, it was like the veneer was all chewed up in the point. And I was going to scrap it, but this is back when ivory was still legal and it had an ivory joint and parts on it. So I just finished it to see how it hit, and it played really well. So that's a cue I'll never let go. It's just my personal cue. I don't play with it anymore. It's still here though. I have it.
Are you like the OCD organized artist, or are you like the messy artist, like just stuff everywhere,
I'm a little both. So the two guys I learned from, they're kind of on both spectrums. I know, like, I first learned from Kent Davis, and he's actually pretty well organized. And then the other guy I learned from was Ariel, and he's kind of all over the place. And it's like Kent's organized, but it's not as fast. And Ariel is like not as organized, but he gets a lot done.
Okay.
So I so
Who
I'm in between because I learned things like from both of them that I liked doing, and things that I don't want to do it that way, as the organization type thing.
on your website it says who's in your shop, who helps you?
Oh, there's no we. That's just how the guy wrote it who built my website.
So it's just you.
Yeah, it's just me.
Okay. Chris, did you look at any of those cues in
I
the
did. I like
how about just the lineup?
yeah, I like the lime turquoise. That's one I showed my wife because turquoise is her favorite color. She really liked that one. So what got you started making cues?
Basically being a collector. I was just really into cues. I mean, it's funny because like when I get into something, I get like really into it. So obviously, I know when I first got serious in a pool, and I was like, okay, I want to get a serious cue, and I was thinking like, this was before I was even into custom cues. I was just like, oh, okay, I want to spend like $500. Like that should be like a nice cue to last me my lifetime. And then the store I went to, the guy showed me a couple Sean Limiteds, and the one at the time I bought, I think it was like $800 or $900, which was like more than I thought I was going to spend. But I ended up researching it, seeing that yeah, they were valued that like that the value was there, and it was funny because I was making payments on the queue. I was giving them a couple hundred every week, and then when I finally paid off the queue, I got home with it. It was a nice Sean Limited queue, and I didn't even have time to practice with it. I went straight to tournament, and that's the first time I ever won a tournament. Was the day I got that queue. So I was basically hooked on cues ever since.
Okay, here's a question we like to ask. Can a cue make you play better?
In my opinion, yes. I've played with house cues, and it takes time to get used to it. But I feel that the cue is more. It gives you more confidence mentally. So if you feel confident with your cue, like obviously it's not going to be in the back of your mind when you have a tough shot you got to commit to.
Well, I know that you're proud of the way that your cues play. You are a player yourself, and it's well known among cue collectors and players that Cohen cues hit well. And I like what you said on the little interview when other people say they ask you to describe how your cues hit, and you can't use someone else's name to describe it.
Yeah, my experience with that was just because I've been to expos, and some guys would be like, oh, I don't use this material, or I don't use this pin like so other maker. And then, because they don't know him, some guy goes and tells the maker, and the maker thinks like, oh, they're talking bad about me. I don't care for this person. Like, I was talking with one of the cue makers at the show this year, and definitely like the difference with the industry now and how it used to be was like, it was really ego driven. A lot of other cue makers didn't like each other. Like a lot of the new guys coming up, at least the ones that do full time, we're all friends, and we can talk and communicate without being like upset that they're gonna steal our business or ruin us. It feels like more of a community versus like a competition.
That's the vibe I got while I was there. I mean, you were out talking to the other cue makers the whole time. You were barely at your booth. You were walking around.
Yeah, I was barely at my booth. That was like social. That was the social moment. Yeah, I mean, I walked around a lot. That's kind of why I like this event versus like Super Builders Expo. It's more to go talk and meet the people, and yeah, you don't have to be like a slave to your table in a sense, because it's a smaller area too. Like it's not like, oh, he's not at his booth, I can't talk to him. It's like, oh, he's over there, let's go talk to him.
Okay. I got a question on, well, let's put it this way. It's custom cue making, and you make cues exactly how the player wants them, or are there certain things that have to be?
So to a degree, I mean, like we get backed up with work, so I try to limit it to a certain sense. Like if somebody wants like an extremely different like butt taper, or they want like a different length wrap channel, I really don't do that. It's just it's more work and it stops me from everything else. So to a degree, like mostly what I can do is like I could try to nail like the weight, the shaft sizes, the length, and the balance point for certain woods. Like some aren't achievable, but those are pretty much the things they could choose. But if they want me to do like a thicker butt or like too thin of a shaft, those are kind of like things I won't do.
Okay, so what percentage of your cues would you say are custom built exactly how someone wanted them versus for your inventory?
Oh, I'd say like 70 to 80% are custom orders
Okay.
of what I do build a year. The rest would be either like what my dealers get or what I build for like a show.
Okay, you can want to shout out to your dealers.
Yeah, so my three main dealers would be superiorcues.com, recollectioncues.com, and cornerstone cues. But I also have a new dealer that I started doing business with this year, and they're great people. It's a Biggle Box.
Say that name.
Biggle Box.
Okay.
Yeah, people will know them if they've gone out to APA or BCA. They're from like the Oregon area. They travel a lot for events. They sell a lot on Facebook too.
How much do you get to travel?
I usually just go once a year, typically for Super Billiards Expo. That's kind of why it was nice to have this event. It got me out of the shop again for a few days.
All right, so I've seen a little bit of your shop on the video where there's like a background of, some very nice looking machines. How many cues are going on in there at one time in different stages?
Yeah, right now I got a lot going on. I have a rack up, like, so that video was done like 5 years ago. I have a lot more new machines now, so the shop's kind of organized differently, but I have a cue rack up on the other wall that I didn't have before that holds like 24 cues. Right now that's like half full, but I have about 2 other cases full of cues that I'm working on as well. And by cases I mean like 12 by 24. So yeah, I technically I have more than I'm gonna finish for like the next year, like going. That's kind of why like I all the time everybody's like, well, I know it doesn't take that long to make a cue. Like, oh, he's just fibbing his numbers to make it look like a long wait. I was like, no, I'm like, I only build, I'm trying to hit 50 a year. The most I've made was like 38 in a year. So I'm trying to hit a goal of 50 cues a year, but I have over 80 going on right now, and I probably still have like another dozen orders I haven't got to. That's kind of why I'm out like 2.5 to 3 years right now.
But you're busy.
Yeah.
Are you just in there jamming the music for like 10 hours, 12 hours a day? What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you mentioned that because I have Bluetooth speakers I bought myself for my birthday years ago, and they're on each end of the shop. So if I'm not running like a loud machine, yeah, typically I'll be playing music in the shop.
All right, what kind of music?
All kinds really. A little bit of everything.
Okay.
Usually I like it's funny, I'm like the only person in the world who doesn't use Spotify. I just play off Pandora or YouTube.
I just downloaded Spotify so I could watch the Jeremy Jones Joe Rogan before waiting for it to come to YouTube. I just downloaded Spotify today.
Oh, was that this week's?
Yeah, check it out. It's 2 hours.
He already made it.
Yeah, I just posted like an hour or two ago.
Funny you mentioned Joe Rogan. So Justin Collett from Tar.
Yeah, the action report.
You see him at the show?
Did I see him?
Yeah, he was at the show.
Oh my gosh, I saw him. I didn't even say hi to him. I didn't even recognize him.
Yeah, it's funny because I met him years ago at Hollywood Billiards through Justin. I met Justin originally. I was helping run an event at Hard Times, and I was doing stats for Justin for one of the events, and then it was like a year later at Hollywood Billiards. Joe Rogan was there, and we were just shooting around pool. So I know Joe doesn't remember that, but like he's bought a cue for me and he emails with me. So I took a photo with Justin at the event, and then I don't know, you guys are familiar with like those Thug Life videos or memes?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have an app on my phone called the Thug Life Generator. So I took the photo with me and Justin, and I added a gold chain, sunglasses, a Rolex, and a stogie out of his mouth, and I sent that photo to Joe. I mean, to Joe Rogan. Yeah, it said tar up in this B. So,
Okay, now for those of you who don't know, how tall is Justin? He's huge.
yeah, I mean, Justin's over 6'4",
Yeah,
six. No, he's probably at least 6'6", maybe.
yeah,
He's a big dude. Yeah. I'm like 5'3".
yeah. It's a unique picture.
Yeah,
It's
no, and somebody mentioned that like when we were taking photo together, and I remember when we were hanging out when you were in Vegas, BCA Nationals walking down the hallway, and me and Justin were just talking, walking all the way up the hall, and then another buddy of ours came by. He's like, "Man, you guys make it the most odd couple ever." It's funny. Yeah,
what length of pool cue you think he plays with?
I've never really talked to him about that. I mean, I think ideally for someone his size should be a 60-inch, but I never heard him really mention that. Maybe he plays with the standard length.
Okay. I got one random question that's about cork wraps. Have you ever done it?
I've done one. So they're nice when they're done correctly. But the only problem I have with cork is it absorbs everything. So I know like a lot of people that like linen wraps and they clean them one time a year. There's no way of cleaning the cork. So if you sweat a lot, it's going to absorb that. And then over time, it starts to smell bad.
Ah,
Like with the linen, you can clean it. The cork, there's no way you would have to just replace it. Although if your hands are clean, the cork is one of the best feeling wraps to have.
did you see Nick Varner's cue? It was kind of right in front of you. It's the only ugly cue on his collection, and it's the one he won his first world championship with.
Was it the one on the far right on his rack?
Yeah, and the cork wrap is all chewed up. It just looks like someone chewed on it.
Was it a Tad cue? Do you remember which cue it was?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I remember that. Yeah. Yeah. So when I went to, even though this was my second year participating, the first year I ever went to the event was back in 2012. It was also in Vegas, and Nick Varner was displaying there, and I was just like, I didn't know he had collected cues, and he had the old cue there. And I think it's funny because if you look at that cue today, there's like kind of it had a piece of lead, it had like lead tape wrapped on the forearm, so you could see where the tape was. And I had asked him about that at the show, and he's like, "Oh yeah," he's like, "This was before there was like too many people working on cues." He's like, "That's how we added weight on our cues." Yeah, he literally had a piece of lead tape wrapped on the forearm.
How about that?
Yeah, because I've seen an old school cue too, where the guy, it had a washer underneath the linen wrap, and the cue maker said, "Yeah, that's how we used to add weight to it." And the guy got the cue refinish. He's like, "Yeah," he's like, "Could you please put the washer back on under the wrap?" Like he wanted that old school like thing on it.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about your favorite materials to work with and why?
Ebony, it plays well. It's a nice solid wood. Uh, curly maple, also known as like fiddleback or tiger maple. It has it has good playing characteristics. So like a lot of things that we use, they're normally like tonal woods, kind of like what's used in instruments. So if you look at a lot of guitars, you'll see like they have ebony necks or sometimes cocobolo bodies, or they use fiddleback in most of the guitars because it has like a good tone to it. So typically those woods would translate to like good playing cues.
Okay. All right. I got my little list of questions here.
Okay.
Before you were able to make a full-time living building cues, what else were you doing? What was your job?
Let's see. I went to school for film, but I never really did anything full time with that. I kind of wanted to be like an editor. I had a bunch of like part time like gig. The thing with the film industry is like unless you're working on a studio job or like a TV show, you're kind of always looking for your next gig. So as most jobs you'd be working like 2 weeks max at a time. Normally they're only like a day or 3 days long, and then you're looking for the next gig. So
Okay.
I had a couple like kind of assistant cameraman jobs that they paid well, but they were only like 1 or 2 day jobs, and I only did like 2 or 3 of those. And then I was working. So basically, what got me jump started in cue making was I was already part time working on cues. I had an office job where they were like, "Okay, we're gonna give you your I forgot the name. where you're on your 3 months and then you get full-time payroll basically. So like on the final day, and I remember the day exactly, it was a Halloween day. They let me go. It was we sold consumer electronics. I just did customer service. I handle like the eBay account and all the emails through Amazon. Like we sold computers, a lot of like gaming keyboards, stuff like that.
There's your probation period.
Yeah, probation. I couldn't think of. I knew it started with the P. Yeah. So it was literally like that. The next day would have been like my probation ended, and I was gonna get the full-time rate that I wanted. But they moved the business, and I guess they had a lot more expenses, and this is why I really appreciate working on Q, is how being your own boss, because you control things. Because it was like the owner of the company, and it was only like 5 of us working there. Like she couldn't even fire me herself. She had my coworker let me go. And he was like trying to explain to me, he's like, well, they wanted to hire you part-time. They weren't expecting to have someone full-time. And then, it was just when they moved, they had a lot more expenses moving into a new building. And I guess they just needed to cut their losses. So they ended up letting me go.
It turned political.
Yeah. But even then, I remember back then, my father had told me, he's like, well, he suggested, like, couldn't you do what they're doing? I'm like, yeah, I mean, I made all the contacts, knew all the companies they dealt with, but I really didn't enjoy that job. It was just, I knew it was temporary. It was only going to be for a year or two. I was just comfortable with it because it was literally like 3 lights from my house. I was spending like no money on gas. So it was just to get me by. But like I said, when they let me go, I basically kind of jumped full time in the queues, and it took off from there.
Okay, let's talk about where you live. I know you're in California. Can you tell us where?
Yeah, the city I live in is Cerritos. So unless you're from California, you don't really know where it is. So like I kept telling people about the show. I live right in between LAX and Disneyland.
So there's the pool hall. There's a college in Cerritos still, right?
Yeah, it's just a community college.
Is there?
So what most pool players would be familiar with, I was literally like 10 minutes away from Hard Times in Bellflower. That's where I played at a lot.
So there used to be a pool hall in that little shopping center. I don't know what direction it was.
Oh,
but
yeah,
across from
yeah, that's Varsity Billiards. That's actually the first place the original owners of Hard Times started.
Yeah, I was out there in 1994, and that's the only pool hall out there that I ever went in. So
there used to be a lot of action out there when Jeanette Lee came on the West Coast. She played out there, but it closed down like right when I started playing pool in 2003.
I had an old Mucci original and walked in there, and people just laughed at me. Man, people laugh at Mucci's out here, so I tried to sell it, and nobody would buy it.
You mentioned that the pool hall I play at now. When I first went in there, all the good players played with Miucci cues.
Times change.
Yeah.
So let's talk about you and your involvement with the Mez West State tour. Is that did I say the name right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So originally, I'm good friends with Oscar Dominguez. Like, we both met each other when we were like 20 years old and hit it off ever since. So he had reached out to me if I wanted to sponsor. This was like the final season they did. And, I was like, yeah, but you have Mez Cues as like the title sponsor. They're not going to get mad about that. He's like, we'll just advertise you as the repair guy then. That's why my banners would say like official repairman of the Mez West State tour. Yeah.
Well, okay. Are you still involved with them?
No. So ever since basically COVID had hit, they did their last event on I think it was the New Year's weekend before COVID hit. And then also Oscar ended up buying Hard Time Sacramento. I know that supposedly they were going to revamp it. Maybe. I think Oscar had posted something that they were going to plan something else in the future, but I really don't know what's going on with that right now.
Okay. Chris?
Oh, are you sponsoring any players?
Technically, yes. So Roberto Gomez was sponsored by me. I mean, it wasn't like a traditional sponsorship. He's actually a good friend of mine. The first year he came out to the US, we kind of like traveled all over the state. And that was before I made cues as well. And like years ago in Vegas at BCA Nationals, he came up to me. He's like, hey, I want you to make me a cue. He paid with his own money to get a predator shaft for me to match it to him. And then he also came up telling me, he's like, he's like, you're a good friend of mine. He's like, whether I use it or not, I'll never sell it because you're my friend. So that's why I was like, okay, like I'm gonna make him this cue. It was like a Coca Bolo 4-pointer, and it had the Superman logo inlaid in the butt sleeve.
He plays with that, or he was playing with that.
He was, yeah. And he ended up signing a contract with Predator for like a year or two, and then he just told me he's not on contract anymore. I had started another cue for him, so he literally like messaged me before going to the show. He's like, "Hey, I really still want that cue." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be working on it, so I'm gonna try to get to that to him soon."
The whole time I was hanging out with him, he played with that cue, and I never knew it was your cue. I just knew it was a Superman cue.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
So
also, before the other player, technically the first person I sponsored was Chris Robinson, or Reinhold. He was Robinson at the time. I still have him as Robinson on my phone, but and that also wasn't like a traditional sponsorship thing. Chris had an old Titleist cue, and he asked what it was valued, if I could do anything with it. So I basically, and I talked to his mom too at the time, saying like, the butt was worth like $400 at the time. I ended up trading him a cue for it that was like worth $1,600. I let him pick. I had 3 cues out, and he picked the one that he used. Before he was considered professional, that's what he used. He won the junior nationals with that cue.
Okay.
And I made him a couple other cues that he used shortly, and then he had signed his contracts with the other companies. So I think he's not.
Did you see his call out yesterday on Facebook?
Yeah, and he told me that same thing almost like a year ago. I think it was even right before the last year's Moscone Cup.
He just made
he just
posted a list. He just posted
the difference with him now is he didn't put a list of who he wouldn't play, but now he did. But I know, I mean, I'm not trying to start any like storm coming up, but I kind of know he really does want to play Wolford. I think he had mentioned that he hasn't lost to him gambling before, so I think he wants to just kind of show that. A lot of people, because Chris originally, I guess he was going through something. He was trying to take on photography jobs, or he didn't want to travel as much, but now he wants to get back into playing again, and I guess he wants people to still consider him that he's a contender to be on the Moscone Cup team.
Absolutely.
That still plays that level, so that's what that call out's about. It's because he knows he's not going to make it on points right now. He already knows that, but he still wants to be, and I don't think he expects it either. I think he just wants to be respected that he can play on that level with those other players.
Mm-hmm. And I like that he made the list. That shows respect for them. Or, I mean, I don't know why he put Hennessy on there, but Hennessy's a top level player.
Yeah, I think it's more of a speed thing, if anything.
He doesn't want to play him. Like torture.
Well, the funny thing too was, I don't know if you guys saw, John Schmidt did a call out against Hennessy about a month ago or two.
Huh?
Yeah, Hennessy called John Schmidt out in the beginning of the year, and then I went to my friend's house and he was getting lessons from John, and I asked him. John had just posted it 2 days before I saw him, the call out, because I guess John's father had passed away and he was dealing with that, so he couldn't play Hennessy at the time. But now he had called him out to play, and he said he mentioned about a shot clock. He says it doesn't have to be ridiculous. We could establish the time the shot clock needs to be, but he's like, basically, it told him like, the only way I'm gonna ever play you is there has to be some type of shot clock.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And it's funny too how he mentioned Bergman, because Bergman doesn't really travel out of his state anymore. He's been out in my state plenty of years, and the last big match I saw Bergman do, he was playing unbelievably slow. And that's not how I know Justin. Justin came out here when he was like 19 years old. My buddy who used to live in Texas saw Justin walk in the pool room, runs right up to Justin and be like, "Hey, give me the 7 out. I'll play you for $200, right? Race to 9." He's like, "Sure." They go, and right out the gate, Justin breaks and runs 7 racks. And Justin used to shoot like fast. So when I saw the last time he matched up on a big stream, he was shooting extremely slow or taking his time. I was like, wow, that's not how I first met him. So it kind of surprised me.
Yeah. I think he's got different speeds. The thing is, he just doesn't miss. I mean, it doesn't, when he's not missing, he can take a little while longer.
I got a very good story with you and him about missing and not missing. We played, I staked, me and a couple friends staked Warren Kiamko playing him in Vegas. They played for 10,000, raced to 23, bar table 8 ball. The final score was 23-21. Guess how many balls were missed in that match?
1.
2.
Wow.
But guess how many shots Justin missed? He lost 23-21. Guess how many of those shots he missed?
I gotta say 0 just because it's
He missed 0.
and lost.
He scratched once on the break and he broke dry at the end. It was 21-22. And I'm like, oh shit, this match is gonna go hill. And he broke dry.
Okay.
But he did not, but when he was shooting at the table, like not on a break, he did not miss a shot at all.
Okay.
There was
you get
even
any
one
Scotch doubles partner. You get any Scotch doubles partner on
Yeah.
a bar table. Is it gonna be Justin?
Yeah, I mean back then it's like it's either him or Sky basically. And the good story too is even though we won the cash that set, the end of the week we matched him up again, Warren with Jeffrey Ignacio against Sky and Bergman, and it was highway robbery. Bergman and Sky just ran away with it. And they did that in the public room where the tournaments were being played, like on an open table. So there was a big crowd of people watching that. That was, God, I don't even remember how many years ago that was, but that was still at the Rio. Like it was only like the second or third year that it was ever at the Rio when they matched up like that.
All right. Have you ever bought any of your old cues back?
No. Oh, actually, no, wait. I did one time. I had a friend pass away and my buddy was helping his parents sell it. So he just asked me, he's like, hey, would you take this much? And I gave him the low number on it, and I ended up kind of taking a loss on it because I sold it to a dealer of mine, and the shaft was completely like I didn't even roll the cue. The shaft was the worst shaft I've ever seen. It not only did not roll straight, it had like 2 warps in it in the middle and in the end. So it's how when people roll a shaft, you get the taper wobble. Like this thing was dancing. That's how bad. So I had to make new shafts, and then I polish up. And I was like, well, let me polish the butt just so it looks nice for the dealer. And there was a huge crack going all the way down the butt sleeve. So I had to refinish the whole thing. So I ended up taking a loss on it. So I haven't been offered that by too many people, but typically I kind of tend to not want to just because it's not worth it in a sense.
Okay.
I mean, it'd have to be like, and I don't like offending people. It would literally be like highway robbery if I were to buy one back just because I'm so busy working on other ones. Like I still do repair work. They need me to repair it. I can do that. I just meant like for me to purchase back a queue, it's kind of tougher for me.
Yeah, I just know that some people, like there's one that they really wish they never would have sold, and then maybe that guy wants
I
a
haven't
new
had any like
one.
that. Like I said, most of the ones I make are custom order. And I remember like, yeah, the video interviews, me before I mentioned like there's some cues that I hit. I wish I didn't let go. It's just like, I'll test hit everything sometimes. And there's some that play like phenomenal. You're just like, oh my God, like there's no way anybody's going to be unhappy with how this thing plays.
Now, do you stick with one cue or do you switch it up?
I try to. I kind of switch it up a bit. I've made myself like 3 cues. But I mean, the longest I stuck with the cue was maybe 4 or 5 years, but it seems like I switch every like 1 or 2 years. I try to stick to one. It's just sometimes, especially now that I build them, it's just kind of like, oh, I like this. I want to make this. And also it kind of just took me that much longer to kind of dial in exactly like the specs I want. Because the last 2 that I actually did make for myself, I mocked it up off of another one that I felt played perfect. So I try to nail the same exact weight and balance.
Do you play with low deflection shafts?
No, I used to. So like the history when I said that story about the Sean Q and I won the tournament the first time using it, I bought a 314 shaft with it right away. With the money I won from the tournament. And then that was that's all that Predator made at the time was the 314. Like a month later they came out with the first Z shaft. And I bought that for the Sean Q, and then I played with Z shafts for a couple of years. I had other Qs and I just had Z shafts. Then I went back to regular maple and I used that for a long time. And then when carbon fiber shafts came out, I played with the Revo for 2 years, and then I played with the Mez Ignite for about 1.5 years.
Okay.
I was in a slump, and just needed to switch things up. So I went back into a wood shaft, and I just felt like that was better for me.
Well, I know you're busy. Do you get a chance to play? How often are you playing?
I try to play at least twice a week, like outside of my house. Like I have a table at home, so I hit balls every day. But I run a Monday night tournament, so sometimes I play in it, sometimes I don't. And then I try to get out like once a week to a tournament that I'm not running.
Okay. Well, if someone wants a cue built from you, can they come out and actually visit with you? Like,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, most locals they can contact me. I've had a few people that have ordered from me, and they were just happening to visit in California, and they've come and visited. So yeah.
Okay. Well, Chris, I asked all my questions. Eddie, I hope you give us some more time later. You want to close it out?
Well, sure. I mean, since you, yeah. Eddie, we appreciate you joining us.
Thanks.
When I'm out there, I'd dang sure like to come visit your shop and see your cues. One question for me before we go. So since you collect cues, and I know it's probably going to be hard to narrow it down to one, but who is your favorite cue builder?
That's not hard at all. My favorite cue builder is Tab Kahara, which is now run. He passed away in 2013, which is now run by his son, Fred. But Fred had been involved in the business for a long time. But their shop, I've always looked up to their work. And actually, the first time I was starting to look at custom cues, and their dealer showed me their catalog, like those were the only cues I liked how they looked. So I've always admired their work.
All right. Well, we'll wrap it up right there. Like I said, appreciate you joining us. If you like content like this, please hit the subscribe button down below. Give us a thumbs up and leave us a comment and let us know how we're doing. And we'll see you next time on the Fooling Around Show.
All right.
Congrats, Eddie.
Thank you.